Haas, again, welcome to our live stream every Wednesday at approximately 12:30, 12:40. We get started both on Facebook and YouTube. And so this is running live both on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome you to, and actually would like you to go on and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would appreciate that very much. And also just to like us on Facebook, share this important information that we're going to have today. I'm really delighted today to have as our guest here at Covenant Eyes two officers, state police officers here in Michigan, who are, many of the videos that I've done over the past months have been with people who are really on the front lines. I'm telling you, these two are really on the front lines because they're really dealing with this issue of human trafficking. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'd like to welcome Officer Steve Kramer and Officer Amy Bellinger from the Michigan State Police Department. And they're here in our office. They're also part of a group that we do host here every month at the Covenant Eyes location here in Owasso, Michigan. It is the Human Task Force on the Task Force on Human Trafficking here in Shiawassee County of Michigan, and I believe you are both part of that group as well.
Both members
Yes.
of
Both members
the
of it, yes.
organization, correct.
So I welcome you, and I'd like to get right into some of the things you do. Tell us what it is you do. Amy, tell us what specifically you two do.
In the state police?
In the state
Okay.
police, and also for the community, yes.
So we are both community service troopers for the Michigan State Police out of the Flint Post. So our roles and responsibilities is to basically bridge that gap between community and law enforcement. So we're kind of the liaison. We host a lot of events in the communities. We attend a lot of meetings. We host a lot of meetings. We host a lot of groups. We do pretty much anything and everything that combines community with law enforcement.
Another large part of our responsibility along with that is education. We go into the schools, we talk to the kids about all the hot topics and things that are getting kids into trouble. The bullying, the social media, the sexting. We do human trafficking presentations to both kids and adult groups. So that's a large part of what we do. Pretty much anything and everything that the community wants or needs, we're available for.
And you do this on request, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And so we are going to be putting in the comment sections on this video contact information for you
Yes.
too. And so if anybody does, of course, you're pretty much local here in southeastern Michigan, and so,
Yes.
but nevertheless, I would imagine that if someone emails you with a request, what can I do, even if I'm in Texas or somewhere, I'm guessing that you would have something to tell them.
Yeah, we can always
And so,
offer
yes.
advice or
Yes.
ways to do things,
Yep,
definitely.
because it's an important thing. There was a story going around, Steve, that Michigan was second in human trafficking in the state, and just in our conversation before this started, you told me that's not quite true. It's actually better news than that. So
Right.
tell me what the statistics really are.
The misquote out there was that Michigan was second in human trafficking. We're not. We're actually, I believe, 13th. We're second in victim recovery, which that I would see as a good thing.
That's a good thing, yeah.
I think we have, with the state police, with local jurisdictions, we're active in it. We're seeking out violators in ring. We do stings and things like that. We have education out there. I think we're doing a lot to be in the community to try to bring people out of this industry. It happens everywhere in the community. Amy and I deal specifically with Shiawassee County and Genesee County, but it's one of the big misconceptions is you live in a rural area, that stuff doesn't happen out here.
We live in this nice little rural town of about 20,000 people, and nothing ever goes wrong here.
No, of course
everything is
not.
perfect.
Sunshine and
So you
rainbows.
really do know firsthand that human trafficking exists in Shiawassee County.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yes, and we work hand in hand with the FBI. And the FBI has active cases coming out of Shiawassee County and obviously Genesee County. You have Flint. So the biggest issue over here with Shiawassee County, they do a lot of the recruiting over here. And so because
They do recruiting here.
Absolutely,
they
yes.
being the
They-
people who are
the pimps and the bottom girls, which they have a person called a bottom girl, which she has the most seniority in the group. So she's the one that is designated to do the recruiting. And so what they do is they send these girls, sometimes boys. 20% of human trafficking victims are males, but they bring over these girls and boys, and they are sent over here to recruit, and then they'll take them to Flint, they'll take them to Detroit, they might take them to Miami, Las Vegas, take them out of the state. So it just really depends, but a lot of the recruiting is being done here. And with human trafficking, drugs go hand in hand with that also, and meth is a huge issue over here in Shiawassee County. So the pimps and everything from, say, Flint are bringing over materials and stuff to make the meth over here, and it's going back and forth.
Wow. Of course, here at Covenant Eyes, we are working against pornography, but human trafficking is closely tied to pornography. Have you found that to be the case, or do you think
I
that's
think
true?
human trafficking is tied to the sex industry in general. Some of the your Craigslist, your Backpage, the escort services, things like that. Unfortunately, anything to do with the sex industry, if you look long enough or click long enough, it's going to take you into somewhere to purchase, to hook up or satisfy your needs or desires, if you will, whatever people want to call it. But absolutely, they're related. The two go hand in hand.
Is it a form of slavery?
Oh yeah, it's the modern day form of slavery.
So, being in slavery, people look at the whole civil rights era, the 60s, right up to the present, really, talking about slavery. It's in the news today, people taking down statues and so on. And they don't realize that it's right here, that it's surrounding us right now. Every time I've said this elsewhere, that every time we click on pornography, we're participating to some extent in slavery, in this human trafficking. It's a terrible tragedy.
The human trafficking too, we focus mostly on the sex industry, on the sex trafficking. There's another side of the coin to human trafficking, which is slave workers, which is really no different than, I don't know if Amy remembers, but back when we were growing up, they were called indentured servants, is how slavery got, how people excused it, things like that. Oh, well, they're doing the same thing with some migrant workers. Promising them the world, we can get you legal, we can do this, we can do that, you come work for us and we'll take care of things. And of course, just like back then, they never pay off their debt, so to speak, so they're working endlessly for these people, and these people now are afraid to say or do anything because they're afraid they're the ones who are going to be in trouble, so they let themselves be used and taken advantage of. Like I said, we all focus mostly on the sex industry, but there are the two sides of the human trafficking. And I bring that up only because you mentioned slavery. It's when we educate on it, that's what we call it. This is the modern. This is today's form of slavery. It's it's no different. People are still being forced to do something for little to no pay, little to no benefit for themselves. That by definition is slavery. It was wrong then. It's wrong now.
And they'll take their identification from them in their passports so that they can't run, they have nowhere to go, they have no identification.
Have you seen, you do community education. By the way, we're here with Officers Kramer and Bellinger from Michigan State Police Department who provide community education. But besides community education, do you actually see things firsthand where
Yes.
You go in? Tell me a little bit about what you do in that regard.
So, well, we've had, do you want me to include Genesee County or just Shiawassee County?
Include both, sure, yeah.
So we had, well, let me actually share a really touching story that actually happened, a couple weeks ago. We were at the Cruise in the Pits car show in Owasso. Yeah. We were sitting down having lunch very casually, and suddenly this older lady walks up to us, and she's in tears. She's not saying anything, but you can see tears welling up in her eyes, and she's just kind of standing there. And then after she kind of composes herself a little bit, she tells me that she attended one of my presentations, I believe in Owasso. And she wanted to thank me because she said there was somebody in her family that she believed was involved in human trafficking. And after she saw my presentation, she said she knew for sure that they were. And because of that, that person in her family had been saved from human trafficking. And she was so thankful. And she told us to keep getting this message out, because the more people that hear this, the more lives that can be saved. So I had that just a couple of weeks ago, and it touched my heart.
It was incredible. I was there, and it was just knowing that, everything we do, that one person made everything we do worth it.
Absolutely.
When you see something like that.
I say that here at Covenant Eyes too.
Yeah.
We have 250,000 users, but that one person who
we talked to thousands of kids, and if we saved one of them, then it was worth
Right.
it makes it
our
all
job.
worthwhile, doesn't it? So, what then is the? You talk about these people who target kids. What's the average age that kids are, or what's the target age for?
12 years old for boys.
12 years old for
13
boys.
years old for girls is statistically that's the target age. So between 12
So I
and
have a
13.
13-year-old grandson, and I should be concerned about that.
Concern. I hate to use the word concern because I don't want people to be scared. You should be aware.
So what should I be aware of? Tell me.
Possibilities.
What, if I am concerned, what do I need to be concerned about? What do I need to be aware of?
The biggest thing I'd be concerned about, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and the main thing I focus on is their internet usage. With the young kids, this is no longer back in our day, you had prostitutes and whatever actually walking the streets and things like that. Do they still do that? Yes, but that's not the norm, the mainstream anymore. Now it's all done through social media. If you open up Yahoo News on any given day, you'll see some family or group talking about some messages that their son or daughter was receiving playing Xbox or playing PlayStation from somebody, or on an innocent music app that is open to chat, where they're being approached or accosted by these individuals. The biggest thing I do is, I'm checking my daughter's stuff constantly. I hear parents, I don't want to invade their privacy. Are you kidding me? I didn't have privacy when I was 13. I don't believe you did either. You're not doing your kids any favors by being their friend. You need to be their parent. You should be going through their stuff. The kids need to know. That's why we start the education as low as 6th grade, because that is the target age. We'll go in and give a presentation on human trafficking. We'll go in and give the presentations on the social media and the sexting. You can't take things back. Kids nowadays are too willing to trust people online, and to buy into the something for nothing theory. We were all raised, if something sounds too good to be true, it is. I don't think some of our kids today, we live in an instant gratification society where you can get anything you want right now because it's on the internet. And I think that's hard for some kids to deal with, because they still have that innocence where they don't believe that people are that bad out there. That's where it's your job, my job, her job, to inform them of things like this.
And there's so many cases where we have these older people pretending to be 16-year-old boys and girls, and they're very convincing, and our kids believe that they are who they say they are. And then, one thing leads to another, and it's, just send me a picture, just one. I'll delete it as soon as I get it. And then 1 turns into 5, which turns into 10, and then that's where the blackmail comes in. And then, well, if you don't keep sending these to me, then I'm going to come hurt you, I'm going to hurt your family, or I'm going to take these pictures and all your friends are going to see the type of person you are, your family, your church group, all these people are going to see what you've done.
Oh my.
So they blackmail them like that. There's a new app that just came out called Yellow that I just found out about yesterday. And it's basically considered Tinder for tweens, is what they call it. So basically, these teens can get on this app and they can exchange photos. They can talk to people. There's no verification for your age. So anybody could say that they were a 13, 14-year-old child when they're a 56-year-old man.
Wow. Wow.
and they're talking to our kids.
Wow.
So you got to be aware of this type of stuff, like what Steve said. You know, all these different apps. You can text people without it ever showing up on your phone bill. You know, you can send photographs without it being monitored. You know, Snapchat. Kids think that it's gone after 10 seconds. It's not. You can screenshot it and the other person won't know.
What age would you recommend that parents start talking to their kids about this? When is too young? It sounds like
My
12 is too
suggestion
old.
would be, you know your own child. When their
Yeah.
curiosities start, you know, if they're old enough where you're letting them use a computer, then you need to have a talk with them. You know, every child matures at a different rate too, and I can't put an age on it. I don't think either one of us could, because you know, every kid develops differently. I wouldn't keep putting it off. The longer
It sounds like 13 might be too old.
I think so.
Yeah.
My daughter started getting it around 10 or 11. But it's, you know, and we've had some people, well, I don't want to ruin their innocence. Well, either you or us can talk to them, or somebody else will. And we're going to be nicer about it, and we're going to be honest about it, or somebody else isn't. By the time they've already talked to somebody else, it's too late. The damage now has already been done. I would rather have my kid be informed and aware. That's why I don't like to use the word, I forget what word you used earlier, but concerned, aware. I don't want to concern her. I don't want to alarm her. You know, my 13-year-old, and I don't think she's scared of anything, but she is aware of things. She's come to me before, Dad, what's this? You know, something popped up, you know, when you're on certain websites and, you know, these pop-ups just happen. And to the point where she will come question it to me. So I know I've at least gotten through a little bit where if something is getting a little out of line, she knows she can trust to come and talk to me. She knows she's not in trouble. She didn't do anything wrong. That's a big part of our education when we talk to these kids, is letting them know if somebody's doing something bad to you, that's not your fault. You know, you're not the one who did anything wrong here.
Are you familiar with the book Good Pictures, Bad Pictures? Have you seen that? I'll have to show you that book. It is a book that I've recommended before, but over the past several months I've talked to thousands of people, and I asked the question, how many in this audience, and it's the adults, how many in this audience have never ever seen pornography on the internet? And so far I've had 6 people raise their hands. All of them were over 60 years old, I believe.
So they're not on the internet.
5 of them were women, 1 man. And so they're probably not on the internet. You're right. I didn't ask them, but you're probably right. And so it's not a question of if your kids are going to see pornography.
It's
it
when.
really is when.
Yeah.
And so this book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, talks about, it actually gives you a plan to start talking to your kids even at a young age, to tell them what a good picture and a bad picture is,
Yes.
and what to do. And you know, you talk to a parent, encourage your kids to talk to their parents, and so on. I think that training is an important thing. So if you had a message for the parents, what would that be?
Well, we like to say, you know, don't be their friend, be their parent. Really, really pay attention to what they're doing. And it's an ongoing thing that even I have at my house, because I have a 9-year-old daughter. And I'm like, Emily, what happens when you hit send? And she says, you lose control. So, I mean, so even parents can teach their kids, you know, you don't have to go into specifics
one.
about, you know, sex and pornography, you know, at that young of an age, but you're building on it, right? So you're starting off, well, as soon as you hit send, you now lost control. So whoever that goes to, they now have control of that photo or that video. And so I've taught her that, and she's 9. So,
Wow, that's great.
you know, it's the fundamentals almost.
It's educating on, you know, you start off with the educating on what privacy is. Hey, strangers don't need to know your last name. You know, if you're on a gaming system, oh, I'm Emily, oh, I'm Rachel, which is my daughter. That's all you need to know.
Yes,
They don't need to know where you live. They don't need to know even necessarily how old you are. You know, you can have a conversation with somebody, and you know, I get it that these kids are into these gaming systems, and I've done it before myself. I don't see the fascination in it personally, but I get why people would want to have a conversation while they're playing these games, and I get that. But you And when people start getting too personal, certain buzzwords to watch out for. I know her daughter, and it's funny because I'll tease her and she'll come up with all the right answers for me. So I'm like, okay, Amy's doing her job because Emily knows. She knows I'm messing with her, and she's like, I know the answer to that. But at least you know they're listening to you and they're paying attention. You do it in a non-confrontational, where you're not demeaning them, they're not in trouble, and kids really do listen. I mean, we don't give them enough credit to realize they're paying attention to what we do and what we say. It's all on how you do it and how you say it.
Being a good parent obviously is a pretty important key to that. But what about the person who may suspect that there's abuse going on or some sort of human trafficking going on? What are the signals to watch for? If just for me walking down the street, this lady that came to you at this cruise, what signals did she watch for that you instructed her about?
Well, she didn't go into specifics like that, but we teach for like student ages. Truancy is going to be big. 1 in 3 runaways will be approached by a trafficker within 48 hours. So runaways are a huge target. And if you think about it, they're looking for a roof over their head, somewhere to sleep, somewhere to shower, somewhere to eat. So a trafficker sees that, as a victim, potential victim. They're easy because they're looking for things. But drugs, like I talked about earlier, they go hand in hand. The addiction to drugs, because that pimp wants to control them, and if they can get them addicted to drugs, then they now have them in the palm of their hands. Because anybody that's been addicted to drugs or alcohol, they know the struggle when you start relapsing or when you need that next fix. That pimp is going to be there with that next fix anytime they need it. They will be an endless supply of drugs. So drug addiction is huge. Bruises, scrapes, bite marks, needle marks. We had a victim that was covered in needle marks where her pimp just kept stabbing her over and over with needles.
It's for punishment, not
really?
drug injection.
Yes, as punishment.
Because it doesn't leave big scars or anything like that. A hypodermic needle is very small. It's painful, but it doesn't leave big, long-lasting marks on the body, so they use it for torture. Adding on to her, coming home with expensive gifts. Yeah. One of the big things I tell parents, and I've even seen it before, your 13-year-old comes home with a $400 purse and you didn't buy it. Where did that come from? Too many parents just, I don't know where it came from. You should. You should be concerned about things like that, because that's one of the tactics of these traffickers, is they'll start off the other way, showering them with things, making them think, they use that lover boy approach where they're buying them things, making them feel special. The other reason why a 13-year-old, what are you going through at 13? That puberty age. Girls want nothing more, even boys, than to be told they're pretty, they're special, they're wanted, they're unique, whatever the case may be. So they're using it. One of the videos that we showed the kids, it actually shows 2 victims. And that was what sold her. This man bought her a dress, and nobody's ever bought her anything before. Right there, she'd have done anything for him because she liked the way that made her feel. It's no different than a drug. Why do people continue to do drugs? You're never going to get that high that you got the first time you took it. They call it chasing the dragon, but that's what you're continuing to try for. This little girl was no different. She wanted that feeling again that she felt when this man bought that dress for her. So she's almost doing whatever it takes to try to get that feeling back, even though it's never going to happen.
It's frightening to think about the situation that these kids are in. I almost can't imagine it. Well, I can't imagine what these kids are going through. How do you get them out of it? What do you do to get them out of a situation like that? What's the success rate in getting them out, and so on? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the hard part is they have to want to get out. That's kind of the key, because
why would they not want to get out?
There's several reasons. Sometimes their families are threatened. Sometimes they're threatened. There's all kinds of circumstances that revolve around why they wouldn't. Sometimes they make a lot of money, and they get addicted to that. The lifestyle, they call it living the life. And usually the pimp will make them think that if they go to authorities, that they're going to get arrested too. Child pornography or child prostitution doesn't exist. There is no such thing as child prostitution. It's illegal until they're 18 years old, no matter what. And so they think that they'll go to jail. And statistically speaking, it's between 5 and 7 times that they will be arrested, maybe for retail fraud, or maybe they'll have drugs on them. Any type of interaction, it's between 5 and 7 interactions before they actually start thinking themselves as being victims.
Wow. So then after 5 or 7 times, where do they go from there? How do they make a life again?
So we have all kinds of resources. Genesee County, Shiawassee County, we have pamphlets of all types of resources that we can get them. We do have a national hotline that they can contact if they need help and they don't know where to go.
Do you
or
know
who
that
to talk
national
to.
hotline offhand?
I had a feeling you were going to ask
I
that.
know,
Now that I'm
I
put on
know.
the spot, I can see it.
We'll look it up while we're talking. Our team will look up the national hotline for
human trafficking. Yep. And they can also
And we'll
text
put that in the comments.
Be Free.
Oh,
So they can go text or they can call the national hotline.
excellent.
So there's all kinds of different resources. We have organizations that are dedicated specifically to human trafficking victims that will get these victims the resources that they need.
A place to sleep and eat?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yep. And they'll help them rehabilitate. If they're addicted to drugs, they're going to help them with that. Just all kinds of resources to get them back on their feet.
That's something that these local task forces have been really helpful in Genesee County, especially here in Shiawassee County. The members of the task force are the ones who are coordinating, finding beds for these people, whether it's here local, whether it's out of state, whether it's upstate, downstate. There are different organizations. The problem with it, like back in the day, domestic violence, that wasn't a thing. It always existed, but until they came up with a name for it, now you have domestic violence shelters and things like that. That's where we're working for the sex trafficking industry. Unfortunately, things like that take time and they take money. We can put all the laws we want into place, but if there's no money behind it, it's really hard to help these individuals. The juveniles is easier to help because then we're directly connected to DHHS, so we can get them resources and help through them. Once they hit the adult age is the problems that we run into. And that's why we like and rely on, I think, a lot these human task force groups. The one here in Genesee County, although not that old, still in its infancy, I think is really making great strides. It's structured and people are there who really want to help. And there are a couple different, do you remember there's a couple different organizations now that actually have beds for them, place that they can go. It might not be a whole lot, but we do have resources available to us. Big thing is if somebody wants to get out of the lifestyle, that is something that we encourage you, go to your local task force. I think later we can put up the website for the local task force here. That's something, if somebody comes to law enforcement and says, hey, I'm involved in this, I need help. We're going to help them. Genesee County, I know now has specifically, you might be better to talk on that, the girls' court.
Oh, yeah, with
I
Judge
think you're a little
Newblatt.
more familiar with it than I am.
Well, Judge Newblatt created this program over in Genesee County, kind of like a, with these girls that get into trouble, it's kind of like instead of putting them through the system and them having things on their record, it's kind of like a diversion type of program that they try to work with these girls that have been arrested for the retail fraud. It'd be young girls and, that have committed these minor offenses, and they try to work with them and sort of straighten them up a little bit without going through the big, harsh court system.
I think 16 states now have legislation either passed or it's in the process. Sometimes you have to name something to get it out in front of people. You two are really working hard to present this education to our communities, but the legislation to declare that human trafficking is actually a national health crisis, really of epidemic proportions. and it's getting worse, not better. And so, whatever we can do, I'd like to see that here in Michigan too, to just have the recognition. This is a thing. It's not a small thing.
Correct. There is Senator Judy Emmons has been very in front of all this. She's worked very hard getting legislation. I can't remember the number, but several bills were passed into law. We've done several things with her, even around the state.
And the governor also has a task force on human trafficking.
There is a statewide task force. It started, the state police had one down in, at the time it was called SEMCAC, Southeastern Michigan Crimes Against Children. It was a state police run task force, which the statewide one now has members from state police, local police, sheriff's departments. There's a statewide task force, which each one of these, like Genesee County, Shiawassee County, are all associated with, just in a smaller, more direct form with the community. But the task force, they all keep in touch, because even Governor Schneider has taken, I believe he's taken it very seriously. He's dedicated time and resources to it. Even our job here, that's one of the things that he likes very much that we focus on, is the human trafficking and the social media and the sexting, because those three all go together. We all know one doesn't exist without the other, unfortunately.
Yes, that's right.
I'd like to see us going a little further, but I think we're going in the right direction.
I think we're making huge strides.
I think so too. That's obvious. If we're 13th in the country for sex trafficking, but second in recovery, congratulations on that. You're part of that success story, so that really is a great thing. It really does touch me deeply that we're in the battle against pornography, that when people watch pornography, they don't understand. They're in a sense participating in this sex industry, particularly when they're paying for it, but even when they're not, they're still providing income
indirectly, yes.
Indirectly by clicking on that pornography. And none of us would openly admit anyway that we would be in favor of slavery, but here we have people actually participating in it, perhaps not even knowing it, but recognizing that we're actually participating in this industry. By the way, the number is 888-373-7888. So that's,
I knew I had the first three in
I
my
know.
head, and I'm like,
so
I was thinking it was
that's the
737.
Maybe some
national
camera
hotline.
shock right off the bat. I'm
I
like,
know.
why can't I remember that right now?
The national hotline for if there's any concern that there's human trafficking going on, that
Yes.
national hotline is the number to call. So.
And when we present to the communities, we give them this number, because if they suspect anything, they can call into this hotline and they will give that to the appropriate law enforcement agency.
It's a good resource. It's one of those, because people have come up to us before and said, I'm not sure, but that's when you would call this number.
If you
And
see
just
something,
report
say
it.
something, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
The OK to Say program, it's kind of similar to it. Don't be afraid to give that hotline information. They will dole it out to the appropriate authorities if need be. That's also, I like that number, because then it's the same people, so that we're not sort of double doing the same thing.
Yes.
Maybe one person called the state police, one person called the Wausau police. Before all this, we didn't even know that we were both working on the same thing. Now, another reason I really like the task force here that's run out of Covenant Eyes is it's members of the state police, it's members of the sheriff's department, it's members of Owasso PD, other local police agencies. So we're all on the same page.
Yes.
We all have the same eventual goal in mind, so I think it's only makes sense that we all work together to reach it.
That's great. Well, Officers Kramer and Bellinger, I thank you for joining us. So you go out into the community, and you also, one of the big things you do is go out and talk, you have presentations. What are the two top presentations that you get? What are the top ones?
Human trafficking and cyberbullying and sexting.
And that's by request then?
Yes.
People, and they actually request
Yes.
human trafficking and cyberbullying and
Those are our
sexting?
top two requested. I mean, we get requested. We have a presentation for just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
But those are definitely our top two most requested by schools, community groups, hospitals, counselors, you name it.
And for good reason.
Yes, absolutely.
That's excellent. So
Every time we give one, it leads to 10 more.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, somebody at that presentation wants it given at their.
How far out are you booked?
Honestly, a month to a month and a half
Really?
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
You know,
Especially during the school year.
Yeah.
School year can be 2 months.
Uh-huh.
It gets very busy during the school year.
Yeah, okay.
And we're given, you know, sometimes 6 a day, you know, different
Oh, my.
schools, different grade levels. That's why
Wow.
we usually go together so we can
Yeah.
alternate it, you know.
And we have
yeah.
them specifically for school age children, and then we have the adult version. So we have a PG version and then a more PG
in-depth, detailed
13, a little bit
statistics
more,
for the
yeah.
adults. The difference between the two, you know, with the adults, we don't sugarcoat anything with the adults. We'll use the terminology. They need to know. Some of it isn't real pretty, but that's what you need to know. When people are saying certain words that you're like, what does that mean? You know, that's like, you know, my kids are texting this. Well, parents need to know what that word means.
Yeah.
With the kids, we just approach it in a different light and show how they're becoming victims.
And to
things
get the
like that.
up-to-date information, like you talked about the app now Yellow and,
Yep.
and Backpage.com and things like that, kids don't belong in those sites. They really don't belong in them to begin with. So
Kick
as
is another one,
parent-
K-I-K.
Yeah.
If I can just throw another one out there
Yeah.
that kids do not belong on. There's no
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 reason,
good will
no
come from
good
that.
reason to be there. That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah. So.
And what's good about us being male and female partners is what we
Uh-huh.
like to do is if we go in the schools, we separate the female students from the male students.
Wonderful.
You know, the females, since they are majority of the victims, they pay attention better. They'll ask questions. They'll be more open. And I usually get approached by at least one student at the end of the presentation saying, you know, something bad has happened, or I know somebody that's involved. What do I do? So I think it's important to separate the genders.
I think more so for the girls, I think feel more comfortable being open and honest about things with Amy than they would be with me. And rightfully so. I understand that. You know, we're talking about 12 and 13-year-olds. I get that. But I think same thing, people don't think about it, but same thing for the boys. They don't want
Right.
to sound vulnerable or whatever in front of other girls.
They don't want to sound like that.
But when it's just
that's
us
right.
in a room,
Yeah.
probably one of my most probably surprised, I was actually, I think it was at Ovid Alternative Ed. I actually, after the presentation, had a young man come up and wanted to talk to me privately about it.
Wow.
A situation, which only reinforces to us that, okay, they're listening. You know, this really is working, because even the kids who you wouldn't think would be open to the idea are the ones coming up and talking to us. So obviously we're doing some good. And these kids really are listening. Even to the parents, that's another message. Your kids are less listening, whether you think so or not.
That's right.
Even if they only hear half of what you say, which we know is probably all we heard our parents say. But if they hear it enough, you're going to get the whole message.
Well, I was the 13-year-old boy, I don't know, 3 or 4 generations ago, and I probably would not have been one to go up and talk to you unless there was something going on. But
Right.
nevertheless, I would have filed it away for future use,
Absolutely.
definitely. And so that's an important aspect.
Things have changed. What I go in there and I talk to these kids, and the first thing I show who has one of these, cell phone. Everybody raised their hand, and I tell them, I didn't have one of these when I was growing up, and the shock in their face, like,
Imagine that.
how did you make it? I said, no, I didn't just not have it. There was no such thing, and I would not trade places with them for anything.
Me
I do
either.
not look back and wish I had all this.
No.
I don't. I wish I didn't have it now.
Yeah.
But that's where the world is going.
Probably
and again,
your
you have
job, you need it. Yeah.
you have to raise
Yeah.
your kids for the world it is, not the world you wish it was.
Yes, that's
That's
right.
another message. Is I know we all wish things were better, but they're not.
I still
We
use
gotta
a
be
flip
honest with
phone
our
myself,
kids.
actually. I really do.
And you
I really
get
do. I use it
reception
as a phone.
everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, Officers Kramer and Bellinger, I want to thank you for joining us
Thanks for
today
having
on
us.
this live. It's very informative, and encourage people to contact you if they have any questions, particularly if they're in southeastern Michigan, to even arrange you to come in and talk. But by all means, if you know of any particular situation in your community or in your family even where something is going on that you question, that national hotline that we posted, it's 888-373-7888. Call that number and get information, or contact these two by email. I'm sure they'd be happy to respond. So thank you for joining us on this live presentation, our weekly live stream, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having
Thank you for
us.
having us.
Thanks.